Okay, so we saw in chapter 1, Rav Kook is all about the approach of the person learning. Learning is a transformative experience. So where does he go from there into chapter 2?
Chapter 2 is called 𝗺 HaKodesh 𝗵𝗞𝗺𝗺𝗁, which means holy wisdom, which comes from the source of life itself. So Rav Kook begins by basically submitting that if you would compare any possibility of engaging with holy wisdom and anything that we deem not holy wisdom, 𝗕𝗵𝗄𝗃, this mundane wisdom. So by definition, a drop of holy wisdom is 1,000 times more illuminating than mundane wisdom. And the reason is as follows. Rav Sachs, 𝗍𝗃 sadly just passed away. Rav Sachs was a master of understanding this, teaching from Rav Kook. Rav Kook basically is suggesting here that science, even if you fill bookshelves, filled with wisdom, if the wisdom maintains in the realm of the mundane, it can't tell you what to do. You have no idea what to do next. It can tell you how things work, but it can't tell you anything about what you're supposed to do with it. Rabbi Nachman's first teaching in Likutei Moharan comes to mind as well, and it's very much, I feel like this piece in Rav Kook is very much rooted in that. Rav Nachman says that when a person looks at anything in the world, so their first interaction, before they find out how does this thing work, how do I use it, is they're supposed to look at it and find the 𝗖𝗵𝗆𝗁𝗺𝗑𝑙 davar, which means to find what Hashem wants me to do with this thing. What's it for? How do I best use it? So the language which we use in, Rav Kook is using this language throughout chapter 2, and it's used, his whole thing is called Orot.
Light.
So what's light? So we have lights in this room right now. There's light shining into the room. Light allows you to walk into a room, see a hammer, and realize very quickly a hammer is really heavy on the top. It's pretty good for hitting a nail into the wall. Microphone, not so good. You'll probably break the microphone and won't get the nail into the wall.
So it's understanding the function of this thing before going too much into it. In other words, it's you have to train yourself to say, what is this thing, this table thing?
Right.
What's this camera thing?
So the difference between holy wisdom and mundane wisdom is that in mundane wisdom, you can trick yourself. You can walk into a room and see an object, and you could figure out what it's for, but not necessarily use it in the right way. I'll give you an example. You walk into a room and you see a pen on the table. Well, it'll take you 5 seconds to realize that a pen is for writing. It's pretty good for marking things down, for making a drawing, for making a note for yourself. But what holy wisdom does is it adds another layer on top of that pen, which says, whoa, whose pen is that?
Why does it matter whose pen it is?
Can I just take that pen and use it if it's not mine? It takes what can sometimes become a skewed version of, this is good for me to use in a certain way. And that's why the language which is used is or haganuz, this hidden light, as opposed to the regular light is, light will tell me what this thing can do. But 𝗵 HaKodesh, which is rooted in the Makor HaChaim and the source of life, is not going to tell you what it can do, but it's going to tell you what it should do, what you should do with it.
How do you decipher what to do with it? Now, just my thought is, if I'm already in the thinking of, I'm here to serve Hashem, I'm here to build a relationship with Hashem through his other people, through his world and everything. So straight away, my approach when I'm approaching anything, if I'm switched on that day, that moment, is what is this SD card holder? How can this be something that can reveal kadosh, wisdom, holiness?
In essence, that's what 𝗵 HaKodesh is. However, in order to make sure that you're properly coming to a conclusion which is sound and not just, I just have a general vague desire to do good without it necessarily being nested in any formalized wisdom. So the training is through the studying of 𝗵 HaKodesh, which means studying Torah texts and studying other texts, which together present these two different styles of study, present how do I engage or not engage with all of the different things in the world.
Right. So in a funny kind of way, that chapter 1 approach of transformation, the text, if you approach it as a transformative experience, the text will, by definition, transform you.
Yeah.
And then you start to operate, not by just seeing what this thing does, it's good, my idea of good. No, my idea of good is shaped through the learning of the thing that I approach to transform me.
Yeah. There's a decent amount also where he's towards the second half of the chapter, where he's essentially drawing on this imagery, which certainly he was aware of it, but he's drawing from a certain imagery which is reminiscent of a very famous philosophical idea called the Allegory of the Cave by Plato, where basically you have these prisoners who, from childhood, were inside of a cave and looking at shadows on the wall because there's a fire that's behind them, and there are people who are behind the fire holding up puppets, and all they see is these shadows on the wall, thinking that's the only reality that there is, when in fact, obviously there's a whole world outside of the cave. There's the people who are making these shadows. So Rav Kook doesn't really draw on that imagery so much as there was a great Torah scholar who lived at the same time Rav Kook. I know that there are letters that they wrote to one another, named Rav 𝗵𝗞𝗺𝗁𝗃𝗁𝗃𝗁𝗃. Rav 𝗵𝗵𝗃𝗁𝗃𝗁𝗃 was a rabbi in Jerusalem.
Great name.
Great name. Hard to say. It was a rabbi in Jerusalem at the time of Rav Kook. He wrote a very famous book called Gesher HaChaim, which is about, really it's about the laws of mourning. But there's a third section in that book. The first two are all, Jewish law, all halacha. The third section are these essays on life and death. And he has this amazing essay where he describes two babies, two twins, inside of their mother's womb having a conversation, obviously somewhat fictional. One of them has a tradition about a world beyond this dark cave that we're both in, where we get fed, everything is taken care of, and it's pretty warm in here, but there's a world with color and all these different senses. And the other one, who is just going by what he sees, says, no, this is all we can see.
This is it.
How do you know, what is this? And he describes this amazing, all of a sudden one of the twins starts to kind of like slip out, the believer, and the one who is the heretic, the one who only believes what he sees with his eyes, starts saying, hold on, brother, don't leave this amazing place that we're in. And he's screaming and he's getting nervous, and his brother, and then he ends the essay by saying, and on the other side he hears the faint echo of people saying Mazel Tov, because he's born into the world. So Rav Kook is basically saying is that we are all in a world where essentially we think we're seeing with light, right? We think there's light everywhere and we can see exactly what we need to do. Everything is available. We know exactly how things work. And as time goes on, we know how to use them even better. I mean, we can manipulate the world in such an amazing, profound way, in ways that 100 years ago, 10 years ago, we couldn't even fathom. And what this second level of light does is recognize that what we're looking at inside of this world is kind of like in this womb where it's pretty dark relative. That's why he says it's 1,000 times brighter if you're drawing from 𝗵𝗞ecie HaKodesh. Because when you're drawing from 𝗵𝗞ecie HaKodesh, what you're getting is not what the world can be used for, but how we should use the world. Direction as to how we should possibly use these things.